Women in the 1800s were unquestionably mistreated by the opposing gender. Women's sole purpose was to procure a husband, become a childbearer, and finally to serve her husband without grievance. Women were only a sliver higher than slaves on the social hierarchy. Ladies throughout this specific time in history were at a transitional stage for rights of women. Women throughout this period were illustrating dramatic changes in women's movement, organization, and mobilization. Women were genuinely tired of the way they were being treated and believed they deserved to be equals to men. A very important advocate for women's voting rights was Susan B. Anthony. She was the most famous of American suffragists who fought for women's voting rights for 55 years. During the Civil War, she was a strong believer of anti-slavery and met a lifelong friend at an anti-slavery conference in 1851 named Elizabeth Cady Stanton. These two women were concerned with many topics such as parental and custody rights, income rights, divorce rights, birth control, and property rights. Women at this time were required by law and marital vows to be submissive to their husbands. Men were beating women, taking children from women, as well as money and property, which they strongly disliked and began fighting to eliminate. Women throughout this time would be unable to survive if their husband or father died because they were unable to accumulate an income of their own. Women were unable to divorce cruel husbands, but instead were required to stay with them. Women that remained single during the 1800s were frowned upon by society and received mountainous amounts of disapproval by many. Anthony and Stanton came together and created the women's suffrage movement in 1869. They began speaking to large numbers about women's rights, organizing petitions to let their opinions be heard, and overall were two of the main people who would help accumulate voting rights later in America. A 15th Amendment was created, giving black men the opportunity to have a say in politics, but they opposed this idea and were utterly astonished that women of all races were not included as well. They made many strides forward for women, and Anthony even met the President Theodore Roosevelt to discuss incorporating women's rights into an amendment. Sadly, during their lifetime, they did not see voting rights given to women, but it is because of them that voting rights were accomplished.